Good morning and welcome to The Other Side. Today we have Farah Killidar, the CEO of the World Affairs Council, Houston. She's a British-trained lawyer, and let's find out who she is.
Hello, George.
How are you?
Nice to be here. Thank you.
So Farah, who is Farah?
Oh, God. As you said, I'm a UK qualified attorney. I'm originally from Iraq.
Yes.
I left Iraq when I was 10, a very, very long time ago. And it was during the Iraq-Iran war.
Can't be that long. You don't look that old.
It was just about 10 years ago. And we moved into Abu Dhabi. My father was seconded out there for 3 years. But when the 3 years came up, he made the decision not to return. The war was at its height.
Probably a judicious decision.
Very much so, yeah. I mean, he paid big time for it. Assets were seized, and we weren't able to go back for 20 years. So I went back in 2013 at the beginning of this last war. But then I wanted to be a lawyer since I was about 12. My grandfather was my hero. He was a Supreme Court judge.
Under the Saddam regime?
No. He was actually, this is pre-Saddam. This is the monarchy.
The monarchy.
This is during the monarchy. He started off as a lawyer, became a Supreme Court judge, and then he was the governor of Baghdad.
So he must have been trained in England too.
He wasn't actually. He was training in Iraq at the time when the education system was quite strong. And he, in fact, was imprisoned and put under house arrest for a number of years when the Ba'ath Party took over.
I see.
So I was adamant to become a lawyer to fix the world.
Okay, well, that makes two of us.
Right. So I think it was about my second lecture at college, I realized that wasn't going to happen. And
so how do you end up in England for your law degree?
My father's an England graduate. He really believes in the UK, the education system there. So
but they train their lawyers well.
They train their lawyers very well. Yes. And it's actually, I have a funny story because in Iraq it's very different. Saddam days Iraq, lawyers are, those who don't, and if you don't get a good grade, you go do law. Because really, in Saddam's days, the laws were what Saddam decides them to be.
So what was the legal system in Iraq? Was it French? Is it civil?
It's based on the French civil code. Just like
Napoleonic code.
Absolutely. It's pretty much like the rest of the Middle East.
So you finished your law degree, then what happened?
I finished my law degree. I wanted to stay in the UK but couldn't because I still held an Iraqi passport, and that was at the height of then it was the sanction years. It was following the first Gulf War. So I went back to Abu Dhabi where my parents still live, and I practiced law with a British law firm there for a number of years. Went back to the UK and worked in London for a couple of years, and then I worked in Dubai for another few years with an international law firm.
And then from there, what do you do?
From there, I met my ex-husband, fell in love, and the opportunity to move to Alaska came up. He's in oil and gas.
From the Middle East to Alaska?
From the Middle East to Alaska, yeah.
Don't tell me you arrived there in February.
No, I arrived there in August, and it was beautiful and sunny and 20-hour days, and it was about 80 degrees, and I thought, this place is wonderful.
Okay. So you obviously survived. How long were you in Alaska?
I was there for 3 years.
Okay.
And it was one of the absolute best experiences I've had.
So watched the whales and the...
Did the whole thing. Watched the whales, traveled around Alaska quite a bit. The people are amazing.
But I understand it's warming up in Alaska, so it couldn't be that bad.
It is. The cold is not my problem, it's the darkness.
So you're the CEO of the World Affairs Council, Houston. So what is the World Affairs Council?
So the World Affairs Council, we're one of 96 chapters around the US. And it was set up right after the First World War, with the premise that foreign policy and knowledge should be available to all. And that you need a venue, you need a forum for nonpartisan discussion, nonpartisan dialogue and lectures. And then it got reinvigorated again right after the Second World War. And right now, today,
so at the end of the First World War, we said there won't be any other wars, and then we had a second one, right?
Right,
yeah, okay.
Right. And then we had a second one, and then they thought, okay, maybe we can tailor it and do it better now so we don't have a third one.
So as we were discussing prior to this interview, so the World Affairs Council is driven by conflict resolution, or at least in the shadow of it, the conflicts are there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, there were definitely, the conflict was an instigator.
Yeah, and so now you have the Houston chapter, and you said you have, what, 90 other
96,
chapters?
we're one of 96 chapters.
Okay.
And they range from the small, you know, 100-member chapter to Houston, which I believe Houston has the large, well, actually, other than San Francisco, Northern California, we have the largest membership. We're somewhere around 5,500.
Now, I've looked at some of your programs, and actually I've attended some. You guys invite some really sterling speakers and you know, people with some really great credentials. So how do you do that?
Well, you know, in some respects, my predecessor, Linda Weiss, made my job easier in that, you know, she built the reputation of the council. And so most speakers know that we bring in the audience. So our attendance, especially for big name speakers, is in the region of 400, which to most conferences is really, you know, a good number. I always joke that my team gets stressed when they see in the 300s, which, you know, so that really, the reputation precedes us, which is really good. Sometimes, you know, we also pay honorarium. We are purely membership-based, donation-based. We are, and, you know, it's, people want to be heard. And we tend to, here at the Houston Council, and it varies, there are some councils that tend to concentrate more on history. Other councils more on published books. We tend to try and provide a combination. And so when we're like right now, we don't have any programs in the summer because nobody's in Houston. Right. We're planning our season. And the way we do that is we already book about half of our programs ahead of time. And we leave the other half for current events.
I see. Now, I noticed that General McChrystal is featured.
Absolutely.
When is he speaking?
1st of September. We're opening with the general. In fact,
let's do a little plug for that. How about that? So when is he coming, and what is he going to speak about?
He's going to be speaking about his book, which has just come out, and it's to do with leadership and how you achieve success, not just in a military sense, but anywhere. And actually, we're having him speak at.
Well, he is making some changes at UT.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he will first speak in the Woodlands. We started a Woodlands chapter back in September, Woodlands series back in September, and we're looking to turn that into a chapter, a real presence in the Woodlands, and hopefully later in other parts of Houston, because you know it's a sprawling city. So he is speaking there in the evening on the 31st.
Okay.
And then on the 1st of September at a luncheon event, we'll be speaking in Houston.
And I think Mr. Ross is going to follow.
Ross is going to follow. And actually, we're also doing a program on Iran. Iran, of course, now is a very hot topic.
Yes, of course.
So we're looking to do 2 programs.
Hot in many ways than one.
Hot in many ways, yes. So
right.
The first one would actually be the 2nd of September, right after McChrystal. And it's talking about the Iran deal from the Iranian side. And we're looking to bring the U.S. side and other sides. And then towards the end of September or early October, the dates are not firmed up yet, we're hoping to do a panel discussion on what it means for the oil industry, for business in Houston, for Iran oil and gas business to open up.
Well, so far, the prices have come down.
Right.
So do you think anything different will happen?
You know, I think this is just a reactionary thing. I think it's just the market reacting to, you know, the news and the conflict. I think in the long term it won't affect the prices as such. I think it has more positive than negative in terms of opening up business for Houstonians.
So Farah, I think, you know, you and I wanted to change the world, so I thought we'll talk about a few things about the world and about the conflicts that we have had over our history. I think it is Hegel who said that what we learn from history is that we do not learn from history.
Absolutely.
Isn't that the greatest truth?
That is very much so. A
All
very
right.
frustrating truth.
So now, you know, obviously, you know, down history, we've clashed the Christians and the Muslims, the Shias, the Sunnis, the Catholics and the Protestants, the North and the South. I mean,
Right.
Civil War, we had one here. So what is it that drives conflict, at this large scale?
In my view, and maybe it's too simplistic, I think it's power. It's power and ego. A lot of times when people talk about the Middle East, they do talk in terms of Sunni, Shiite, and all of that, but really at the end of the day, it's power. Mm-hmm. And it's, I think Shakespeare got it right with the mob mentality. It's
Yes.
unfortunate but true. And you get a leader who is...
Is that a quote from Cassius on that? Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So all you need is an egotistical leader who wants to run the world.
Yes.
And there are a lot of followers, unfortunately. And such leaders tend to frame the conflict in terms of Shiite, Sunni, right and wrong, but really at the end of the day it's power. I mean, you look at the region right now, and you could boil it down to simply, and what I mean the region, I mean the Middle East, you could boil it down to simply a struggle between Saudi Arabia and Iran on who's got power of that region, who's got control of the region.
So, but then how do they manage to indoctrinate a certain class of people with certain ideas, and then on the other side, there's the other dictator who's also indoctrinating his group on two opposite sides so that they can fight, they can clash, they can engage in war, right? So how is that the human mind is given to this type of closed-minded thinking? How do we lend ourselves to that?
Well, to answer that, I would take you to 9/11 and where we were, where the U.S. was after 9/11. I think most people were ready to kill anybody.
Yes.
In retaliation.
Yes.
And I was asked that question a lot when I presented on Iraq. This was during the Civil War, how do people kill each other? And frankly, if somebody comes and kills my child, you know what?
You will do that, yes.
My sense of morality is going to go out the window. But on a bigger scale, you look at the Middle East, and I went to high school in Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates. It was a private English school, but we had, it was a mix of all nationalities. And I come from Iraq. I'm born into a Muslim Shiite family. I'm not myself practicing. But even in those days, and those would have been the 80s, giving away my age, I was harassed for being Shiite. I was accused of being an infidel, of ending up in hell by kids, really. And that comes from the parents, that sort of, So that has been around in terms of the disregard for the other. So it really didn't take much.
Hold that thought. We'll come back after the break. We'll be back on the other side.
Hey. Wow, you look great.
Thank
really
you.
great.
Thanks.
You ready?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay. So you were gonna love this restaurant.
I know, I'm so excited to go.
I'm excited that you're excited.
What is that?
Oh, that's my scooter. Oh, it's cool. You'll love it, really.
No, 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 no.
Life sucks without a car. Bad credit's a bummer. Smart Choice Auto Group can finance anyone. Bad credit, worse credit, even terrible credit.
Welcome back. We're talking to Farah Killidar, the CEO of World Affairs Council, Houston. Farah, when at the break, we were beginning to talk about the conflict, the dynamics of conflict, the psychology of conflict. I guess we could talk about this for a whole year on this topic.
Sure.
But unfortunately, we only have 30 minutes. But we'll try to cramp that world in 30 minutes. Now, with regard to the way that the human species has evolved, we have grown, and we've managed to incite one group against the other, and we have become masters at that. Right. I mean, we have gone to war at world scale. I mean, World War I, World War II, and it's not over. Mm-hmm. We are still doing that. So what is it that we can do? Now, obviously, the World Affairs Council helps in the way that you guys do. You bring speakers from both sides of the conflict, or both sides of the scale, and you try to present to the community, hey, here is one way of thinking, here's the other way of thinking. But how much does that help?
You know, one, I think people have to be open to it. And you and I were discussing, you know, humanity can be quite severe, you know, quite shocking. But people individually, you know, are you know, pretty good on a one-on-one level. I suppose you could say that what the World Affairs Council tries to do is eradicate the other side. There is no other side, you know, we're all really the same. But most people don't think that way. I do find that a lot of times people coming into a lecture or a presentation with preconceived notions, they interpret the presentation in line with those notions. And I've been in several occasions where I've given a presentation on a certain topic, and I've had people approach me on both sides of the aisle complimenting me on the presentation and how I spoke for them. Well, I can't really be speaking for both of them. So I think people, sometimes it's hard to shift people. However, saying that, I do find that dialogue is a big one, not just in terms of the importance of dialogue. I believe it's unfortunate that we've got to a point where we do not speak to our enemies. That is just, you know, for me, it does not make any sense. You as a lawyer would understand these are the people you need to speak to and reconcile with. And also, I have a lot of hope in the younger generation, which is why we, at the World Affairs Council, do a lot of education outreach. We reach about 50,000 students a year with our programs.
I think that's quite impressive that you guys go after the children, because I think, you know, children, you know, didn't Hitler say, you know, give me the children and I'll conquer the world? I mean,
well, I mean, if you
know,
think about it, this is exactly what dictators and have been are doing all around the world, unfortunately, in the negative sense.
I think in one sense, I think people want to be comfortable in a set of ideas, you know, and then if you disturb that comfort, they get all agitated.
Right.
And so these folks that can incite masses manage to reach in there.
Right.
And they do what they do. And
I think a lot of it, to be honest with you, and you see it with children. I mean, you're a parent yourself. I'm sure you saw it with your child growing up. People need a sense of belonging, you know, and most people want to identify with the person across the table. Unfortunately, that usually means they're going to identify with people that are of the same nationality, same religion, same sect, same, even smaller, gets smaller and smaller. I think, again, we were discussing this, you know, the advantage you and I have having lived all over and having had the experiences we've had, is, you know, the downside of it was sort of a question, a sense of, you know, a lack of sense of belonging that I had for many years, because you're always the outsider, you know. But I've gotten to a point where actually, no, I'm sort of, I would say I'm always the insider now. You know,
Yes.
there is a part of you that I will always pick up on as I have that in common with you, you know, and you could be from anywhere in the world with any background.
you know, that, Farah, I think that is an important insight, because I think the urge to belong is pretty strong, I think, among the humans. You know, we see them among the wolves, the pack, how they conform to the rules, and they want to belong, and therefore they'll do anything to want to belong there. And you see them among teenagers as well, I think, yeah. But belonging is okay, but then I think you can't allow people to exploit that.
Right.
And, you know, and that's what's been going on. But, you
Well, I
know,
think politics plays a big role. I mean, if you can antagonize people against your opponent,
yes.
and using that sense of belonging, that sense of you and I believe the same thing, you and I have that in common.
Yes.
You know, that works, unfortunately. And
But it's interesting. Now, look, USA is a melting pot, right? You know, in the late 1800s, the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant wouldn't allow an Irishman
Right.
to be part of that society.
Right.
Now suddenly, you know, they don't make that distinction. They don't differentiate that, right? So now they're all Americans. So I think there's a
But an
way to
Iraqi
broaden
woman would
it.
have a problem becoming a president today,
Yeah,
right?
right.
So, you know, it's just a different group.
Yes.
You know, I mean, the U.S. now identifies. I mean, really. I mean, and that's shifting as well. You know, the new
Yes.
majority is shifting.
Yes.
But I think every
But
newcomer
look,
has that.
our U.S. Supreme Court is mostly Catholic
Right.
and Jewish, and so it's an interesting evolution.
And you look at
of
Kennedy
how,
days.
yes, and how we evolve. I think maybe we are a model of how we can sort of become accommodating of other folks and,
And I
other
strongly
people.
believe that. I've always believed that.
Yeah.
You know, with all the, you know, in the days that during the Second War with Iraq and, you know, especially when the news came out of Abu Ghraib and the torture and so
Yes.
on. And my response to that was, one, human nature is human nature. Again, we're back down to power. You know, one person having power over another. What differentiates the U.S. from other countries is the response to that. Is there is a sense of, there ought to be a sense of responsibility. And the U.S. is ahead of most other countries with that. I think there's been some failures on that front.
Of course.
And again, we're back to that same thing of it was post 9/11, you know?
But you know what is interesting about the United States is that we have some very basic principles, but not just the principles. Many countries have constitutions that say greater, nicer things than we do. But we have mechanisms and an infrastructure, a legal infrastructure
Absolutely.
to enforce that or get someone to enforce it. You know, I think that's the magic of the
I mean,
system.
you just hit the nail on the head there. That has been the problem with the so-called Arab Spring.
Yeah.
Because the emphasis has been on elections, elections, elections. We
Yes.
want the elections today. You should not have elections until you've got the structure.
Because they
until you've
didn't
got
have the
institutions,
infrastructure to
the understanding,
execute what they
Right.
wanted to do.
Right, and look at us. Look at the
Yes,
Middle East
yes.
today.
That's been a disappointment.
That's been a huge disappointment.
Huge
yes.
disappointment. So, you know, before this interview, we were talking about another way, right? And then I remember you pointed out that South Africa was a great example.
Right.
Talk about that a little bit.
That's always that's my beacon of hope. You know, and then there's nothing. You know, this is not to say that South Africa is in a perfect place and they don't have problems.
Obviously
of course they
not,
do.
yeah.
But my belief has always been if South Africans were able to reconciliate the way they did, if South Africans were able to sit down with their oppressors, if Mandela was able to sit down with his oppressors, the people that imprisoned him, and work with them, then anyone can do it.
I think that rugby team story is
That rugby
enormous,
team,
interesting,
absolutely.
and how one man made a difference.
And that's what it takes. I think
Yeah.
it really does come from the leadership.
Yes.
You know, unfortunately, I suppose on a cynical day, I would say there aren't a lot of Mandelas or Gandhis in the world. But let's hope
Well,
I'm
of
wrong.
course, we've had Gandhi, we've had Martin Luther King.
Right.
I mean, you know, look, these folks really made a difference in this world. But I think, and that's why I, you know, even as a lawyer, you know, having studied the Constitution, one of the things that fascinates me about the United States is that we set the ideals and we strive to
Right.
get there. I mean,
Right.
we fail, we do
Absolutely.
crazy stuff, we fight, we do all that, but there's always that abiding, you know, need to comply to try and reach that goal. And
There's
I think
no such thing as failure. There's just lessons.
lessons
right?
we learn and then we move on and
Right.
we keep going. So that's been an ideal thing. So what do you think is going to happen in Iraq?
Oh my God. I wasn't expecting that one. You know, Iraq, I used to say for a while between 2013 and probably into 2015 that there is a very small window of opportunity that we missed. And I do feel that unfortunately it's come too far. We are at a point, not just in Iraq and the whole region, where it is very divisive. Where my own friends and people that I grew up with, you know, the first question that now comes up is, you know, where are you from, which sect, to get slotted into
Yes,
some
yes.
kind of box, whatever that box might be. I don't believe that Iraq is going to get to where it needs to get to, where I was hoping it would get to in 2013. We were all very energized.
We were talking about leadership. You think there is still room for someone to emerge, who's strong enough to bring the two sides together and say, hey guys, let's get together? Because, right now, they're all losing.
Right?
Nobody's
Absolutely.
gaining.
Absolutely.
So you think there is still hope?
You
Am I
know,
being optimistic?
I will
unduly?
still say, and I've said it for a while, that it still needs to come from the U.S. And in twofold. What's going on in Iraq since 2013 is not just about Iraq itself, it's the whole region and the influences that are being played by Saudi and Turkey and Iran and all these factions. In my view, that the U.S. needs to take an active role. The U.S. cannot say, okay, this is not our problem anymore, because really the reality is a big part of it is
We've
a
kind of
result.
said that already.
They have said that already. But my point is, that's been sort of one of the biggest disappointments of the Obama administration. I am a supporter of Obama, but the disappointment was, it's sort of the pendulum shifting. Instead of, you go from one end to the total opposite end. And the U.S. sort of needs to take responsibility for their part and bring the parties together. And unfortunately, when we do live in a world where we don't talk to our enemies, although we're hopefully shifting away from that, you cannot solve the problem in Iraq without sitting down with Iran, Turkey, Saudi, Syria, all of these places.
Farah, thank you so much for joining me
very
this
much.
morning.
It was a pleasure.
Listen, I think we have solved at least 3 problems for the
I think
world.
so. We're good.
You think
We're
so?
good.
Join us next time on The Other Side.